Welcome to the Getting Real with Hillary show. Inspiring stories that change lives. Where ordinary heroes tell their extraordinary stories of how they have triumphed over unexpected challenges. This is where we say what can't be said and use the AAA formula for freedom. Awareness, acceptance, and action. Now, here's your host, Hillary Burns.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Getting Real with Hillary show. Today, I am so excited. I'm going to cry already. To have one of my very good friends, Tracy Hoffman, on with me. And Tracy, she is a Feng Shui Guru, a mom, and an entrepreneur. And she is launching her online course, Clutter Free Simply. And Tracy is very, very, very talented. She does amazing things. And today we're going to hear her story and also what she's up to. So welcome, Tracy.
Hey, Hillary, thank you so much. This is so fun. Yeah, Hillary and I have known each other for quite a while, and I am so happy to be invited on your show. I'm so excited for this and to be able to share a story that I don't think I've told to like almost nobody. Honestly.
Right. Yes. And I think you're, well, I'm going to let you tell the story, but thank you for your generosity, for sharing it. And I hope that it can inspire other people who have the same situation that might not be aware that they can do what you did. So where would you like to start, Tracy?
Oh boy, it is like it's like, how much time do we have? I try to drill it down as shortly as I can. So I'll start at where I started. I was doing actually an organization project with a client of mine, and on the table she had in a plastic Ziploc an article, and she said, that article is really special. That's about me. I was adopted and I reconnected with my birth mother. It's like, really? I'm adopted too. Like, I have to say, nobody talks about it. This is the one thing. Like, everybody talks about, so many things are out there, transgender, gay, whatever. Nobody really talks about adopted. I always consider this the final frontier or the last bastion. It's like a secret. Or at least that's how I felt about it. Anyway, so she was telling me she connected with her birth mother, and she said it was a good experience, but she felt that the birth mother was trying to be involved in her life. And she said, I already had a family. I was adopted. It was nice to meet this birth mother, but I didn't want her in my life. And I'm like, okay, my whole vision had always been like, what would she look like? That's really as far as the extent I've always wondered, like, what did she look like? Because do I look like, does she look like me? That was pretty much it. I only worried about the mother. I always wondered about my birth mother. I never wondered about the father, funnily. And I just thought that now. That's funny. I never thought about the father. Anyway, so I got this. So I said, yes, me too. And she gave me this book called The Girls Who Went Away. And it was a book, and it was written about, it followed the story. Oh my gosh, I popped it up. Anyway, it's called The Girls Who Went Away. It was a woman, she had been adopted, and she went around the country interviewing women who gave up their children for adoption. And it didn't go well for nobody. The story never went well. People became alcoholics. And even back then, so I was adopted in the 60s, 1960. And actually in the 60s, 2 million babies were adopted into families. 2 million. That's a lot. And like I said, and who's out there? Who knows? Because it's a particular way of life, or of how that. Anyway, so I read this.
Tracy, when you said that it didn't go well, these were the people who had given away the babies, and their lives didn't go well, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah. So think about
Okay.
it. Think about it's 1950s, 60s. The girls get pregnant. Let's just imagine it's a high school couple, a high school football, hero and the head cheerleader. That's like, let's just make a stereotypical.
Right.
The
It's
football
never the
star
ugly nerds,
and the
right?
cheerleader. Okay. Well,
Just kidding. That was terrible. Oops.
no, I'm
Okay, go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm
Keep
just
talking.
making one that people can anyway, but funnily enough, a lot of the stories were that was very typical of the stories, the high school football hero and the beautiful cheerleader girl. Now, the girls they sent away, they would go to like Catholic charities. They went down to Florida to visit their aunts in Florida. And that's where I was born, in Florida. So my birth mother was from Pittsburgh, but she went to Florida. Now, funnily enough, she happened to really have an aunt in Florida. So it wasn't just the story, but they would send the girls away and shame the girls. And the boys would go on to college. Like, don't let this affect your life. They'd like make the girls disappear. Or I guess some got married. And even if they got married, there was usually a lot of alcohol and drugs involved. It was just a sin, even if they did afterwards or whatever. But most of the time for the adoptions, they were separated, never to be seen again. And following later, there was mostly depression, alcohol, or drugs from the birth mothers as their lives. Many divorces. I don't think they generally saw their former partners again, but didn't end up. And the men, even though they sent them away, have a good life, college, they had same thing: depression, alcohol, drugs, and divorces. So it didn't work for anybody really. It was a lot of sadness, a lot of trauma, because nobody wanted. It was just like, it'd sweep it under the carpet. It was done, don't talk about it again. That was kind of the attitude, and everybody was going to go on to have great lives. So I read this book and I cried for a week. I sat in bed. All I could do was cry, because I felt, then they wondered, like, whatever happened to again, these were all women whatever happened to my child. So I read this book and I want to find my birth mother and tell her I'm okay. That's all I wanted. I wanted to tell her I was okay. So I was adopted into a family. It was upper middle. I'm Jewish. It was an upper middle class Jewish family. But there was something, it's like you never feel, it's always like you feel like pretending. Like for me, I always felt like trying to be part of it. It was like always there's always something. It's just like there's adopted. I see the adaptable as a kind of a close word to adopted. And I feel for me in my whole life, I've always adapted. Like I'm very chameleon-like. I can pretzel myself into fit in. However, the underneath is I don't belong. Even though I can make myself fit in, underneath, I don't feel like I belong. And that's kind of how it is. There's always seems to be this little veil, like there's just something that it can't get to. And even like I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. I'm not telling this in any particular order, I guess, but even I have 4 children, 4 adult children. At some points, there's been like where it's almost like there's a part to me that no one can get to. It's just like I can't explain it, but I don't. And it's not even like I can say, is it common with other adopted people? Because I don't know that many. Funnily enough, my best friend growing up was adopted, but we were just like we never talked about what's it like for you to be adopted. That was never a conversation. That's kind of seems as you get more adult. Though I have to say the only reason, because so when I was adopted into this family, I remember the story would be like I went as old as I can remember language or hearing. My mom would say, "Oh, you were the pretty." She'd give me the story that I went to the hospital. They picked me out, so I imagine in the hospital there's this big room with all these babies, and a nurse at the end with a cash register. I was always an entrepreneur. I wondered always how much did they pay for me? How much? That's what I imagined. There was no papers. There was no discussion. I looked more like so after me, she got pregnant because she was only 21 they told my my adopted mother was 21. She had, I think, quite a few miscarriages, and they told her that she'd never have children at 21. Can you imagine? So in the office, of her obstetrician had a partner from Pittsburgh, and there was a woman who was the same age as my adopted mother, who was giving her child up for adoption. So they made the agreement in the doctor's office. They kind of prearranged the whole thing. Now,
So that was your birth mother? She met
yeah,
her
my birth
in
mother
there?
gave
Wow.
me, she was from Pittsburgh. They knew
Right.
they knew this doctor who was a partner in Florida. And it was, yeah, a crazy coincidence. So they arranged the whole thing. So I was adopted in Florida, went to this home, never knew anything about anything. And my family growing up never wanted to talk about it. I mean, even though they told me these stories, like that was the extent. And I look more like my adopted mother than she had a child, natural born 2.5 years later, which is very typical. You know, it eased up this tension and the stress. She had a natural child who's special needs. And then 2.5 years later, she had a boy, the prodigal son in a Jewish family. So here I am, went from the golden girl who like, oh my God, you're amazing. You're a child, you know, beautiful, to we have other things to deal with. You kind of just be over there and be a good girl. And then the boy comes along. So not only was I felt like rejected or abandoned once, it happened again and again, various times, like living in the family. Meanwhile, the whole time is like, I love you, I love you. I mean, it was so confusing. And there was other dynamics going on in that family also. It all looked good from the outside, but there was lots of things going on that was very confusing and unsettling to me. Like, it's not surprised that I end up being a Feng Shui consultant. I need balance because everything was always and I was always scanning and what do I have to do just to fit in? So not only, you know, I was always afraid that I was going to be like kicked out or abandoned. And when my sister was like 5 or 6, they sent her to it was a nice institution, but an institution. So at 6, she did leave. So I was even doubly terrified. Like in my world, you know, my little 8-year-old head, I'm like, they kicked her out and she didn't even do anything. She's I'm on tentative ground here. I mean, but it always kind of felt like that. I don't know why. It just was always anyway. So flash forward years later, I was talking to my mother once, said, oh, my friend, let's go back to my best friend. So she married a doctor. She's in the medical field. She's pregnant. I had already had 2 children by the time she got pregnant. And it doesn't really affect you until you go to a doctor's office for when you're pregnant and they're asking you your history. And I'm like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. That's when it really kind of hits. Like, I think I was just dropped down a chimney by a stork. Like, that's how it feels. Like space. Honestly, it feels like you're just floating in space and doing the best you can. That's how it's been.
Wow.
So anyway, so she gets pregnant. She tells me, Tracy, I got my papers for my dad. I'm like, what papers? What are you talking about? Now, the other thing too is I've given birth. So I know there's a paper trail. I had to sign birth certificates in the hospital. In my family, there was always insistence, there was no trail. There was nothing aside from we adopted you. And I look mostly like my adopted mother than her 2 natural children. So people would always say, oh, you look just like your mother. And my mother would smile. I think as a very little girl, I'm kind of like unfiltered. I probably said, oh, but I'm adopted.
Right.
And I think I must have been told not to say that again because I would get this look. If people said that to me, it was like my smile, but the undertones to me was, don't say anything. Don't tell. And
Now,
that's
Tracy,
yeah.
The one who had found, I don't know, when you started, you were talking about someone who had found her birth mother. Was this friend, or was that something totally different?
That was the client. And actually my friend did find her birth mother as well.
Okay.
And it didn't go well. She had her friend contact that and that particular person, that's in her story. Her birth mother said, don't contact me. I never want to.
Okay.
connect with you. I don't ever, this was, so
Okay.
actually I forgot about that. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I once said to my mother, even though this whole thing, like I had this whole idea of don't tell, and it's a lot of confusion. The first time, and I guess I was about within 10 years ago, she said, Tracy, I'd always help you find your birth mother. It was the first time I had the courage to say, I don't believe you, because she's told me this all my life. But like I said, there's these mixed messages. Now, I guess for her, if I had to look on her side, maybe it's extremely, I didn't have this problem. I have 4 children easily. I didn't have a problem getting pregnant, but maybe, it's something very shameful for a person or whatever. I've never had this discussion with my adopted mother, but she said to me, and it was the first time I said, I don't believe you. She got into action. She contacted the state of Florida, got what's called, and then hired a private investigator. And then private investigator said you had to get what was called non-identifying information from the state of Florida. So I had to put in applications for all these things. I get it back. Turns out the narrative that was written up, because you get non-identifying information. There was a narrative. Actually, I was surprised I got a lot of this, that a social worker contacted the birth mother 3 months after the adoption. But the narrative was written by her mother because she was on her honeymoon. I'm like, what? I'm reading this. I'm like, this was years and years. This was, from 1960 when this was done. And this was, like I said, 10 years ago just recently. She had gotten married. So my only question was, what happened? Now I want to find
Right.
because I'm like,
all right. So talk about when you went there. I'm dying to know the story.
So yeah. So anyway, it took 9 months, get the information, sent it to the private eye. 3 weeks later, I have a name. I have it. Now she lives in Pittsburgh. And the irony there was my oldest daughter was going to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. It turned out I did end up going to, so I got all the information. I got the address. I sent in certified letter saying, to this person, hey, my name is Tracy. I was born on, such and such date. I have a feeling I think you're my birth mother. And funnily enough, my daughter I just have some questions. I hope we can meet sometime. There's nothing I want for you. Oh, I also told her, I'm okay. I wanted her to know after reading this book, I'm okay. I have a great life. I'm good. And, but I was curious about why she got married 3 months after giving up for adoption. So, one day I put the younger 2 kids in the car. It was Martin Luther King weekend. I don't remember what year, like 2008, maybe. And we're driving and I grabbed the information, I had her address. So I grabbed it as I was going up there and I just decided I was going to go knock on her because I never heard back. I sent a certified letter and I never heard anything. So I just literally went and knocked. I had my 8-year-old daughter in the back. I knocked on her door. And I've seen these stories where these instant, these instant things where you connect. No, she opened the door and there was 2 younger, teenagers with her. And that was kind of an out of body. At that time, it became an out of body experience. It was because I didn't have words. I just did this thing. So I said, hi, my name is Tracy. And she looked at me kind of like that. And I said, and I didn't look like her at all. No recognition. We could have been selling Girl Scout cookies. There was nothing. So I said, I sent you a certified letter a few months ago. And at that time, I don't know what happened. The younger girls just kind of disappeared. She steps out onto the porch and she looks at me and she goes, oh, I know what this is about. It was a long time ago. It was a mistake. I've never looked back. And in that moment, I believed her because I think the moral for even the comment that she had with my adopted mother is they are in denial. They
put it compartment
and don't tell. It was the don't tell thing, don't tell or don't,
wow.
So anyway, so I said, well, this isn't just about you. This is about me too. So I stood for myself and I said, this is about me and I have questions. So I asked her, I said, well, why did you give me away for adoption after, and then you get married? She goes, oh, I didn't marry. That wasn't your birth father. So the story was now in the narrative, it said that she was an artist, and she would travel around maybe Europe or whatever and take art classes. She wasn't in college at that time. She was studying art around the world or in different places. So, now the funny thing is my adopted mother always said that she always knew more than she knew because her doctor was her best friend's father. So she always did know. She just didn't want to tell or was in denial or couldn't admit it or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, so she said, yeah, she's like, he was died. She said she got pregnant. She was engaged to this other man, ended up getting pregnant by this other guy who supposedly, I guess, was an art teacher. Like I said, my adopted mother always said, I mean, somewhere there was this, I hear these, I kind of remember something like, I think your birth father was a professor. And so I kind of imagine again, there would have been it's not like she didn't say anything. She'd every now and then throw out these wingers, kind of throw out these liners. So she ended up getting this man married her after she gave me up for adoption. Like I said, she did, even though they used to say the girls would go visit the aunts, she actually did have an aunt in Florida. So she didn't have one of the tragic stories, but it was tragic. I mean, it's always tragic. It's not, she was down here by herself, I'm sure. I couldn't imagine, and then she married this guy. Then she went back 3 months later. So let's see. So that was that. So I said, we were she asked if I lived in Connecticut because I had she asked if I still lived in Florida. I said, no, I live in Connecticut. One of her daughters lived in Connecticut. She had just lost her second husband. The man who she married, he had passed. She had 3 daughters after. So I have 3 sisters that are blood relatives.
So that day, how did it end that day?
Yeah. So we just talked and we were kind of joking. I said to her, we just she was in shock. I mean, I didn't give her warning. She was in shock. Right. I was just like, this is kind of strange. But I said, hey, she was a very attractive woman in her 70s. I said, hey, if I look the way you do in my 70s, thank you for my genes. And we kind of laughed. And she said, listen, I got to go inside. I'm sure, we'll sit down one day and talk and, tell you everything. So I was okay. That sounds great. And it was pleasant. It was pleasant. It was a pleasant experience. I really felt good. I got way beyond what I ever imagined. I talked to her. It wasn't just I saw what she looked like. So I felt really good about that. And then when my daughter was graduating college 4 months later, I called her just to let her know I was coming up. I couldn't, it's my daughter's graduation. And she acted like she didn't know who I was, or at least she was like, who's this? What? So I was like, okay, really? So that was the end. 8 years later, for some reason, I decided, because I had the names of the sisters too at Facebook and everything. It's very easy to find people. So I contacted the sister who had lived in Connecticut through Facebook. And I called her and I said, hey, are you sitting down? This is going to be a strange conversation. And I told her kind of the same, my name is Tracy. I was born in such and such and so in Miami. And I think, and your mother is my birth mother. And she wasn't shocked. It was actually she's like, do you know who your birth father is? And I said, no. She goes, oh, well, what I have to tell you is mom now has dementia. She doesn't remember the present, but she remembers the past. I'll find out for you. And she was really interested. It was really cool. We talked for 45 minutes. We'd had laughed at the same things. It was I was so surprised how easy this was. So there must have been around Thanksgiving, because she said she would talk, she'd get back to me. And then, Thanksgiving came up and we, now we're just sending pleasantries to each other. Happy Thanksgiving, happy New Year, happy Christmas, Merry, Hanukkah, all that. And then nothing. So then I think April of that but nothing really was going on except for I felt like, wow, I've got connections in this world. I'm connected to somebody. I'm connected to people. And that felt good. So then in April, I got a call from my sister and she said, we have to tell you something. And she was with her sister. She said, mom's passed. She's got about 2 weeks to live. We wanted to just let you know there's a service coming up. And I said, no, I don't want to come to a service. Who am I going to be? I want to come now. So I got on a plane and went. And, I went to, they were all in her apartment. I didn't know what hospice was. Now I do, but this was, I guess, a few years ago. In hindsight, she must have been in hospice. There was a hospital bed in her room set up and there was drugs involved. She was on medication. But when I walked in, like the sisters just embraced me. They just called me sister, hugged me. I did not look anything like them, but it was just the first time that I just felt like loved.
Wow.
And connected. And we just talked. And then it was very easy. I went in, saw my mother and they're like, Tracy's here. Like she wanted to see me. And it was just like, they said she went in and out of things. And they said it was funny that she would be like, draw you in, like as if she was going to tell you the answer to life. And then she'd like, nothing. So I had a moment like that. Well, so anyway, that was the first night. I had only bought a one-way ticket because I didn't know it was going to happen. Went to the hotel. Next morning, the girls called me at 9:00 that said it's a miracle. She's wide awake and she's lucid, which I wasn't surprised. There's so much energy being exchanged between me and her. And I walked in and we just could talk, like really talk. And she told me how much she loved me. And I told her how much I loved her. And I kind of crawled up in bed in her hospital bed in her bedroom and kind of did like I was a little baby. And I just held and then I felt like I got that that I never had felt. Like I never, as much as my adopted mother, I'm sure she tried as best as she can. And actually, she's not doing well right now. Right now, she's got dementia, and I think she's at the end of her life. And we have a very strained relationship. It's not easy. Our relationship's very hard. But I think there's a lot of this all tied up with it because I could never connect. I think that's not oxytocin is the bonding chemical. And I've heard that when you give birth, there's a lot of oxytocin. It's kind of when you have sex with the man. Women get oxytocin, so you stick. It's done on, you want to see that guy, and it's done like a chemical reaction. If that's going to be the father of your child, you got to be attached to. You want to see that guy. He's going to be the father. It's a chemical. I don't think I have that chemical. I've never felt like that I stick to anybody. That's what I was kind of saying. Even my own kids, there was always some place that it was just I never could connect. But that was before. Since, connecting with my birth mother, I do feel like, and I always had this thing, I didn't feel loved or could love. I mean, again, until all this got kind of put together, like gradually, little bits, it was really, and just the generosity of my sisters to be able to, embrace me and, be so wonderful to give me that experience. Like their mom's passing, then they said how wonderful she was and how everybody loved her. So 2 weeks when she did pass, like I was looking at their Facebook pages, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people posted how much they loved her and she was great. Wow. And she posted a picture of her from when they were younger with her mother and her grandmother, the one who had written the narrative for the social worker. I look exactly like her.
Wow.
I looked at that picture. I'm like, holy moly, that's who I look like. I looked exactly like her mother.
Wow. Now, we're about to go to a commercial, but do you still keep in touch with the sisters?
No, not really. Stuff happened. No. There was like, I do something called family constellation. And I've worked on this many, many times where you work out your family situations on an energy level. And I was told, like, the next sibling to me, person I'm in contact with, the sister I'm in contact, she's not the oldest. There's an oldest one. In the constellation, I was told in a family system like this, when they call it a lost child in that family system, the next one in line, who's number two, who has to act like a number one, has drug and alcohol addiction, and she has drug and alcohol addiction. So my mission in that family, I wanted to heal that family and let that, because I was in contact with the other two sisters, but not that one, and they weren't in contact with her. So something happened that I was able to be in contact with her. I told her who I was, and she didn't believe me. I got cussed out, and she told me I was a liar or whatever. And because of all that, what happened to get to that, which I thought I was doing a healing thing for the family, it kind of fractured a lot of things.
Okay. All right.
Interesting enough, I had to go back to one other thing. The reason why that sister wasn't surprised is because when that remember I said I sent a certified letter to her house?
Yeah.
The sister was at the house that day, read, the mail, like they're all very like close, that family. The post office man, the post gave her the letter. She opened it, didn't know what it was, just thought, they're all kind of like that with each other, very close, started to read it. She said the mom snatched it out of her hand and they never spoke of it again. And even on her, when I was there visiting, everyone's like, you can tell who's the birth father. You can tell now. And you could tell it would get up to here. Like she knew she was dying and she wouldn't say. I could tell she wanted to, but she was drilled, don't tell. Just like in the thing, who went away, you didn't tell.
Wow.
You didn't tell. It's holding secrets. And I don't hold secrets. Secrets. I don't hold secrets.
Wow.
So if you have a secret, don't tell me.
All right. So thank you. And we're going to go to the commercial and then we're going to talk about what you're doing now. So, wow. Thank you, Tracy. And let's roll.
Are you inspired? Are you living a life story you are proud to tell? Are you actively pursuing and creating the life of your dreams? If not, you really need Hillary's AAA program for freedom. Just visit gettingrealwithhillary.com and schedule time with Hillary today.
All right, so we're back. So tell us about Clutter Free Simply, and you can give us the backstory if you want, but I definitely want to make sure we get to what you're doing now so people can contact you to do your course. I think it's a course, right?
Yeah, it's a course. It's an online course. I'm rolling it out. The first session the first module begins January 3rd of 2023. So registration begins in just a couple days. So this is very timely. So thank you for the opportunity to share it.
All right. And to contact Tracy, just so we can put this in a few times, you email her at Tracy, TRACY, B as in boy, Feng Shui, which is FENGSHUI at AOL.com. And we'll say it again later. So that's how you can contact Tracy, right? Is that how they register? By contacting you?
Well, they'll have to contact me directly. They could also send a text or call at 203-247-0298. So that's another way also.
Okay, so 203-247-0298.
Yep.
Oh, I put a 2 down. Okay, 0298. Okay, awesome. All right, so tell us about your course.
So I think, like I said, from being adopted and just everything always been, I discovered I'll do a quick resume. So I went to school to be accounting. So I was an accountant by training. Then I sold real estate. Then I did acting. And then I discovered Feng Shui in 1997, who has heard of Feng Shui? I was looking for a house. It wasn't good. I kept finding houses that needed help. And somebody told me about Feng Shui who had heard of it. There was one book in Barnes & Noble. I got it. It was called Feng Shui Made Easy. It wasn't. Turned out the guy who wrote the book lived 45 minutes from me. He came to look at this house that we were about to buy and said, don't buy this house. And I was like, okay. So now me, the kind of person I need to learn it and study it. So I've been studying it since 1997, traveling around the world.
With that guy?
Not, there was other people. His name was William Spear. He was one of the leaders in the time. I did a couple like workshops with him, but I studied with this guy named Roger Green, who was from Australia. And at that time, and just, yeah. And then I went to India to study, and I've gone to Bolivia, and I've been studying and practicing, and mostly just, it like just doing it and finding out like what's working, what's not. It took me 8 years really just to understand yin yang, like what yin yang is the ratio on a cellular level. So
okay, so can you explain or just give a good definition for feng shui? Because maybe some
yeah.
people don't know. I mean, I kind of know, but I don't really know. So go ahead.
No, I thank you. I thank you. That's, yeah, I'm going to do it real simple. Feng Shui literally means wind and water. Figuratively, it means transformation. So so the way I do it is I'll transfer, if I'm going into somebody's home, I grab whatever is not working. Like, I do it the way I practice. There's an intake form. I ask 3 questions, kind of like MapQuest. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And then actually the third question that I ask is, what are your dreams? Because energy really wants to move towards people's dreams. The universe wants your dreams to be fulfilled. That's, I think, why we're on this planet. We have dreams to fulfill them, they're not like, out there. They're really things to work on. Anyway, and then I do what's called a 4 pillars Chinese astrology chart. And
what's that?
It's based on people's birth dates. It's really your plan. It's kind of your whole life. Like every 10 years, there's different, what they call pillars and energy. It gives a lot of information. It gives you what your best elements are, what your gifts are in life, what best directions. I use it for decorating because it's balancing elements. So it gives you elements like you're red, that's fire. I'm wearing blue, that's water. And there's various aspects. There's energy areas that relate to it, like red is fire, blue is water. So actually, in hindsight, I'd be putting you out, but you've got green there. So water feeds the plants. So we're good. And the plant feeds because if you think you put wood into a fireplace, so actually that's why this is going so nicely, because our elements are all blending. So going to review, the blue water of blue is feeding the green plants in your background, which feeds your fire of your red dress. So this is a very blending and flowing kind of situation here.
So let's say you're doing the pillars. Do you just know that, or do you ask them questions, or you just look?
I run a chart. It's just based on your birth date. It's just based on your birth date. So,
okay.
And time and year.
The computer does it? Like you put it into a system?
Program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I could do it manually, but it's a lot easier just to get it spit out. And then I analyze the chart. I mean, it's kind of like you're there.
Like astrology, right?
Yeah, but it's Chinese. So like, how New Year of the rat, year of the tiger, things. There's 8 of those characters. It's not just like there could be a fire rat or a water rat, but that's for the year. Like this is the year. I don't even know this is terrible. I don't even know. I don't know what year it is.
That's all right. That's all right.
Don't like keep this stuff in my head, but sorry. But so there's 8 of these characters. So it could be, the hour could be a wood tiger, it's just
right.
And then there's analysis of all of that. So basically, what I would go do into people's homes and lives is transform whatever, if there's things aren't working based on their chart, like I'm not getting along with my husband, I'm trying to get pregnant, I have, I'm in transition, I've lost a job, I want to do pursue my dreams, I don't know what my dreams are. Feng Shui can answer all of those. And since a person's home is where they live, that's the backdrop, or it could be an office, it's basically all the clues are right there. So I'm going to set it up to fulfill using all the information from those charts and information from Feng Shui, put those in people's environments to set them for success. It's basically taking anything that's negative in there that's stopping that. I use that, change it around, harness it for positive energy. So it's basically the transformation, which is wind and water. which is basically, if you think of the Grand Canyon, wind and water form the Grand Canyon. Wind, like hurricanes, those are like very transformational elements. They can be used.
But how do you take like a wind and water? Like, let's say you're in someone's home. How does that translate into what you do in their home?
Oh, it's just I'm just saying it literally means, but the figurative, it's transformation. So I use the tools that I use are
you move stuff around.
Yeah, I could do sometimes it's one thing. I had a client once and all I did was they had this like long wandery, the philodendron that was like spraggly, kind of all over the place, and a lot of leaves and nothing, then a lot of leaves and nothing. And that happened to be in their wealth section. So I said to them, I'm like, and there was like two of them in different parts of the room with the same sort of growth pattern. I'm like, that's odd. Does that remind you anything? And the wife starts laughing. She goes, that's how he makes money. And they started laughing. And then all of a sudden the conversation changed. And he's like, yeah, but you won't let me do what I really want to do. And she's like, well, what's that? And he's like, I always wanted to have a restaurant. They both were in banking. So she's like, I'd support you with. And so, between that, it all opened up. And so I snipped off the jaggly parts to where it was healthy. And within a year, he had opened up a restaurant. They had other, issues with the children and other things too. But a year later, everything was like, he had already opened up a restaurant and everything was, they were on to their second child. So everything transformed in that moment.
Wow.
It's like reading the clues. Feng Shui is very literal. It's very literal. It's really funny.
What do you mean literal?
Let's see.
Like if you looked at my desk, you'll see all these cords are all tangled up. Would that mean something? Like you are a mess?
Well, like, no, if you walk into somebody's house and there was like I remember seeing this on a show. I remember there was like a news show and they were showing this house that was like a hoarder, or the garage was filled with stuff. I think it was before the days of hoarders, and they weren't really hoarders. They just were, it was some kind of show. But they showed the house and they're going around. All of a sudden there was a crack. There was a saddle, like, a break where a saddle on the floor where it changes like from a wood to a marble or something like that, where you change the textures and there's usually a transitional piece. Usually I think that's called a saddle. So that was broken. There was like a marble piece that was broken and it was right in the center of their home. And I was like, that's their problem. That's the clue. There's something, it wasn't all this clutter and what they were saying. There was something literally broken between them. Something had happened. That was what there was to it. I mean, this was a show on clutter.
Okay.
They were showing like, I think somebody they emptied all the contents of their garage, but I was like, but that's really, because then the manifesting is the clutter. The clutter is always just the manifesting, which is the reason my methodology of how I do clutter clearing or getting clutter free from a Feng Shui point of view is the first time, like, listen, I was not the most organized person. I was not born with the organization gene, but doing Feng Shui consultations, first of all, I learned the importance of your space and energy. And if I was going to homes and doing a Feng Shui consultation and it was cluttered or disorganized, we had to start there because I was just going to come in and accelerate the energy. I'm like rocket fuel. I kind of move all the negatives and then all that, like just say clutter or broken things or things in repair, or even underneath that comes out in the intake forms, all the emotional things that are locked away that people don't know, come out. They're all around in the space. It can come out in clutter. It can come out in illness. It can come out like in arguments or, relationships not working and all that sort of stuff, or it's back or forth, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. So I come in neutral, see all this stuff and just make suggestions and grab all the part that's negative, let's say, and negative, like negative, positive. I'm not going to call it bad or good. Energy is energy, but I'm just going to transform it, like flip it around. And I do it by talking, making suggestions, literally let's paint this. You need a, bit of this in here. There was one.
How do you know? Like, were you just
Doing that for
born with?
27 years.
Right, but do you think everybody, if they were trained, could learn that? Or do you just have, it seems like you have a special gift for
I think I'm
knowing.
very sensitive to it, but I think
Okay.
we all know it. I mean, Feng Shui is pretty instinctual, whether it's a safe place, a good place. I mean, if you go to a restaurant, who wants to sit at the table next to the bathroom? Nobody.
Unless you have to go a lot. I might sit there. I'm just kidding.
Okay, how
So,
about next to the bus station where there are all
yeah.
the dishes going
Yeah.
on? I mean,
So, wow.
no, walk into somebody's home. It feels good. It doesn't feel good. I mean, I just know how to define what people feel. Like if
Right.
someone's
Okay.
something's off there, I know what I can go pick it. I've been, I'm trained. I've been doing this for a
Yeah.
long time. I can say why that thing is off and what
Wow.
one. And it's
Okay.
always simple. I make very simple solutions. I think in the 70s, feng shui got a bad rap because I think at the practitioners there were saying, oh, you need to knock the walls down and move a door. Yeah, none of that's necessary. Snip. I
Yeah.
snipped
So,
snipped a branch of a plant or a vine of
right.
a plant and everything turned around. It's all symbolical and it's all symbols anyway. It's like metaphors. They're all
Wow.
metaphors for life. Again, figurative or just
Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's say someone does your clutter-free simply course. What can they expect to get? Why would I sign up?
well,
I mean, what
okay,
would I
that's a
get out
very
of it?
good
Yeah.
question, Hillary. So for
Thank you.
instance, say you've had 11 years of a project, like say you've had clutter sitting on your porch, this beautiful sun porch for 11 years, and you haven't been able to use your beautiful sun porch, but it's been there and you don't even notice it anymore because it becomes invisible or whatever's there, you step over it. But you really do know it's there. So my course is designed to, like I said, this is all getting underneath. It's going to get in. Like if you're physically able to move stuff, like take something to put at Goodwill or create a home for something or put things away or realize you have too much stuff for a space and don't keep buying stuff and trying to cram it into a closet that doesn't hold anything anymore. I mean, if you're capable of doing it, I'm saying without physical limitations or something, then why can't you? Exactly. Because there's emotions underneath. There's things that have happened that are all underneath it. And that's the fun. See, I call that like kind of digging for treasure. That's the fun. And there's all patterns to clutter because people keep kind of repeat patterns over and over. Again, I'm also very good at finding patterns. I was always good at putting puzzles together. I love math. And this is kind of like just putting a puzzle together. There's a clue here, there's a clue there, and it's putting it all together. So my course helps you put the pieces together. We do it, we'll be able to like go through it and put the pieces. And it comes with a workbook, so you can kind of do your own investigative work. And it just is, as you get clearer and clearer, it frees up energy. And then all of a sudden, I had an 84-year-old lady in a week clear her husband had died 6 years prior. She said her dining room was mounded with paper. She went home, came back to the second day of the workshop when I did it live. I'm creating this online. I'm taking my 27 years of in my head and what's worked over and over and over again. And I've looked at, why does this thing work? Like, what is it? And I've broken it down. And she came back at the week. She was like the star. Like the first day, I'm like, I was kind of being a little judgy. I was like, why is this 84 woman walking with a cane sitting in the front row? Like, how is this going to help? She was the star per pupil. She comes back the next week, said she cleared the 6 years of paper from when her husband died that week. So it just frees stuff up. It's all about energy. And like I said, my world's all been about balance. So I think like that's why I do feng shui, because and I've also been on a quest of what is home. Like, I'm kind of interested in what's home. I think again, because of being adopted and growing up the way I did.
So, all right. So the course, just tell me a little bit more about the logistics. It's online on Zoom, and how many weeks is it? Like, how does it work?
Well, it's going to be 4 weeks.
4
It's
weeks.
going to
Okay.
be 4 sessions.
Is it on a certain night?
It will be on, it'll be on the 3rd, which I believe is a Tuesday.
Okay.
I haven't specified exactly the time yet, but
Okay.
it will be a certain time and it will be recorded. So if you can't make it, it will be sent, or it will just be recorded in advance and it will be sent to you. So it will every Tuesday at whatever that time, let's say 3 p.m. It will be rolled out and it'll be 4 sessions.
And people will be on with you? They'll be on with you, right? It's not just, you're just not recording something and sending it.
That's not 100% yet. Either way,
Okay,
will
so
be
you're, okay, all right.
Is
So
either
if some,
way.
yeah, that's fine. I'm just trying to suss it out so people would know whether it relates to them. So if someone has a project that they want to do, or there's something they're not doing, is that someone who would be a good fit for this?
Yeah, and clutter is not only just stuff. Clutter's like if you're overscheduled, if you've had, people giving you things like you've had inherited. I've had people talk to me, well, it's not my stuff, it's inherited. Well, that's clutter too. It's
Okay.
schedules. It's like things that you can't stop thinking about that are in your head. So that's cluttered also.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be
Dealing with
physical.
a lot of stuff, because then that could go with like, well, what's your space look like? Usually people have cluttered heads, are really overwhelmed. Their space is cluttered as well. So it frees up both places. It frees up and gives you freedom and literally peace of mind and clarity. All of a sudden, then, oh, they've seen things that they haven't. Oh, I can do this now. I had a client who, as they were, the 11 years of stuff that was on their porch and in other rooms, was taking a load of clothes to dress for success. While they were, this was after doing, I think, 6 carloads of Goodwill runs. And so they've already freed up. So they went to Dress for Success and talked to the volunteer there. And not only do they donate clothes and suits to people who, need, or who go to Dress for Success to get jobs so they can have suitable clothing to interview. They coach them for interviewing and get them back into, working whatever situation they've been in. And my friend was able to make space for that, to say, wow, I want to be able to do that too. But before, when you're dealing with only the clutter, that's all you can think. There's no room for anything else. You're stuck in just making yourself feel bad. You're ashamed. You don't invite people over. So you're embarrassed to show your homes. You don't, it's just, there's a lack of freedom. The impact. So it's just over and over what I've seen people get healthy from fibromyalgia. I've seen it's a health. I mean, at this point, I feel it's really a health issue. It's a well-being issue.
Wow.
The clutter, it's not just like a luxury. It's really a well-being issue.
Wow. I know someone with fibromyalgia. I should talk to you. So yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Tracy. We got 1 minute left. Thank you so much for being here. Clutter Free Simply. Tracy Hoffman, let's see, email Tracy, Tracy, B as in boy, Feng Shui, which is F as in Frank, ENGSHUI at AOL.com, or her phone number 203-247-0298. Anything you want to say in closing, Tracy?
I want to thank you, Hillary. This was fantastic. Thank you for this opportunity. I love what you're doing. I love these real, like it's getting real. I didn't cry. I thought I was going to, and going back to the first part, if anybody wants to talk to me, use those numbers to reach out too. And, because it's kind of, it's a secret. It's still a secret. It's still a secret, thing. I don't know what to call it, but there's a whole thing around it. It's got its own kind of brand of behaviors and, a set of circumstances that come with it that people aren't talking about, and more people talk about it and anything else. It's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so reach out Tracy is wonderful and she will listen, not judge, and you can say anything to her. So thank you so much, Tracy. Yay!
Thank you for listening to the Getting Real with Hillary show. We hope you were entertained and inspired. Please subscribe to Hillary's newsletter. Go to gettingrealwithhillary.com for more freedom techniques and fantastic stories and links to other great stuff. And don't forget to tune in every week on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on BBS Radio TV. And let's get real. Let's get connected. Let's get inspired and create that life you love.